Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our weekly Torah learning of inspiring and bringing more light into the world. We always like to start off with giving, because how we give, that's how Hashem will give to us. So please give generously, so Hashem can and will give you generously. So I'm going to put some coins in the tzedakah box, and we're dedicating this class in merit of the complete refuah shalema of Chana Leah Sarah bat Pesha Gidol, Rafal Chaim Meir ben Tzima Chasha, Deborah Leah bas Yafa Liba, Chaim Nessa Levi ben Shoshana, Razel bas Hadas, Chana Bela bas Deborah, Yosef Yitzchak ben Bela, and I do this class in memory of my dear grandmother, Rivka Dina bas Yosef Yehuda. I hope you're proud. I'm going to pull up a short video that's going to be dedicated in memory of Freda Bluma bas Shlomo. May her neshama have the highest aliyah. We are now going to share one more beautiful video. We are now going to be sharing one more beautiful video, so stay tuned at the screen to see Mrs. Sternberg being interviewed by Jem on the mitzvah of neshek. So give me one moment while I pull it up.
Mrs. Esther Sternberg is the director of the Shabbos Candle Campaign, a division of the Lubavitch Women's Organization. She was involved in the medical care of the Rebbe's wife, Rebbetzin Chaya Mushka, until the Rebbetzins' passing in 1988.
Chav Bei Shvat was Levaya, and then the Rebbe sat Shiva, and then 2 days later was Rosh Chodesh Adar. And my father and I actually, well, this goes back to another story. We were very involved in the Rebbe's health. Actually, it was my father, and I would do the legwork and help him. So I was involved in certain things, and we actually were there in the hospital when she passed away. And that morning, the Rebbe, we got a call that the Rebbe wants to see us, my father and I, in his study upstairs on the second floor of his home. And because I'm in charge of the candlelight campaign, the Nesha campaign, and my father was my greatest fundraiser, he would always try to solicit the funds from people to keep the campaign going. We had a fundraiser on the Shabbos night during the Shiva. We planned it weeks in advance, never knowing that it'll be in the middle of the Shiva. And we actually were questioning, should we postpone it or should we not postpone it? And we decided we're not going to postpone it, and we'll do something in memory of the Rebbetzin at that fundraiser. Now, I had never written to the Rebbe about doing it because I didn't feel it's right to write to the Rebbe during Shiva about anything we did, because I didn't feel it's right to write to him. But the Rebbe was told that we made a special fund on the Rebbetzins' name to do more advertisement for the campaign. And when we were called in to see the Rebbe, we actually heard that the Rebbe is calling in 2 other groups of people to thank them for doing something for the Rebbetzin. And it looked like the Rebbe wants to speak to us about something about the Rebbetzin, and we were very nervous. And my father was shaking because he didn't know how he could talk about the Rebbetzin to the Rebbe just after she passed away. Anyway, we came to the Rebbe's house on the 2nd floor. He has this very big library, or whatever you want to call it. And the Rebbe had many, many svarim, very big, beautiful room. And the Rebbe is holding out a white envelope and tells me to come over. And what was this envelope? It was the invitation that I had sent to the Rebbe about the fundraiser that I had sent him 2 or 3 weeks ago. And the Rebbe gave it to me, and then he said, the time wasn't apropos for me to give you the blessings for the fundraiser, but being that I heard that you made something special, al shem hanifteres, on the name of the woman who passed away, I want to give you my contribution of $470, which is the numerical equivalent of her name, Chaya, plus an additional $1 for success in this what you do. And the Rebbe gave us $470 in various denominations, and then started to give us a lot of blessings. We were both so nervous that we just remember a few words of that blessing, but all the blessings were for the Nesha campaign. And the Rebbe said to us, Ya'ir Mazolan, the mazel should be brightened of all those people that help you fund this campaign. And Ya'ir Mazolan, the mazel should be brightened of all those that go out and try to influence others to light Shabbos candles. And Ya'ir Mazolan, and the mazel should be brightened of all those that start to light Shabbos candles as a result of this campaign.
We are now going to hear from Mrs. Sternberg how the mitzvah Mifsayim of Neshek started candlelighting to bring extra light into the world. So Mrs. Sternberg, if you could please unmute yourself.
I think I'm unmuted already. Okay, do you hear me? Okay, so first of all, the mitzvah of lighting Shabbos candles has been around for thousands of years. The mitzvah, which means campaign, is something that the Lubavitcher Rebbe started 49 years ago. So there's a difference between the word mitzvah and the word miftzah. Miftzah is the campaign, and what I'm going to be speaking about is about the campaign. The Lubavitcher Rebbe in 1974 was actually September 11th. I once looked up the date. It was September 11th, having nothing to do with the terrible September 11th. But I guess the Rebbe spoke about light and bring light to the world before that terrible September 11th. And maybe that really helped it to be easier than it was, even though it was a terrible thing, it could have been so much worse. Anyway, when the Rebbe started the campaign, he said that we live in a world of terrible darkness. And he called it a double darkness, meaning terribly, terribly dark. And he didn't mean outside was dark because it was 5:30 in the afternoon, the sun was shining. It was very beautiful outside, it was very light. He meant in a spiritual way that the world was in a very terrible darkness. Unfortunately, so many Jewish people are intermarrying out of the faith. So many Jewish people are not keeping the Torah. They're not keeping what they should be doing. They are not even versed in what the faith is asking of them. And the Rebbe said that we should seek out every single Jewish woman and even a little girl from the age of 3 and see to it that they should light the Shabbos candle every Friday evening. The Rebbe went on to say that this has been going on for thousands of years, that women knew they had to light Shabbos candles, and they knew of all the great blessings they got because of it, and they knew of all the light and the spiritual light that came to them from this. However, the Rebbe went on to say, because of the war, when people came to America, a lot of people perhaps were afraid to look religious or do things that seemed to be too religious. They were afraid of the new culture in America, and they were hiding their religion, and a lot of people stopped lighting Shabbos candles. They didn't teach it to their daughters, and they didn't teach it to their granddaughters, and generations grew up not even knowing about lighting Shabbos candles. So the Rebbe told us that we should go out and seek every single Jewish woman and even a young girl at the age of 3 and see to it that she lights her candle in honor of Shabbos. I remember hearing the Rebbe say this and thinking that's a very beautiful thing, but I really wonder how we're going to reach people without perhaps hurting them and telling them to do something they should be doing and they're not doing it. And I just thought about it, and I really had no idea that I was going to later on head this campaign. I just thought about it, and I was very interested. The next evening, the Rebbe spoke about it again. I have to tell you, this first time he spoke was a special address that the Rebbe gave every year to the women of the community. All the women would come to the main shul, the main Lubavitch shul, and the shul was completely emptied of all the men, and all the ladies went down into the big spacious shul and with their daughters and with their children. And it was a special time when we got blessed for the new year by the Rebbe. And every year before Rosh Hashanah, one of the days before Rosh Hashanah, the Rebbe would give this traditional blessing. So everybody was there and everybody heard what he said. The next night, there was again a talk that the Rebbe gave. This time he spoke to all the men. And of course, the women heard it in the women's section, and people all over the world heard it, because we did have a system where people could call into a special number and they would be connected to the microphone and they would hear the Rebbe's message all over the world. And the Rebbe again reiterated the importance of reaching out to every Jewish woman and every Jewish girl. And then I saw that the Rebbe is really serious about this. This is really going to be a campaign. This wasn't just a nice suggestion mentioned once. If he spoke about it twice, it's really getting serious. The next day, I got a call from the Rebbe's secretary, because I was in charge of the women's organization called the Lubavitch Women's Organization. Every year, we had 2 ladies that were from the Presidium that would have the role of president for that year. We were a group of about 12 women that made up the Presidium, and every year we changed off with 2 other women being at the helm. So that year I was at the helm just for that year, which actually my term was going to be over in a few weeks. I got the call from the Rebbe secretary that the Rebbe wants everything that he just said about reaching out to the women, about lighting candles. He wants it printed in the Yiddish speaking newspaper. At that time, there were many people who only spoke Yiddish, and the Rebbe wanted that newspaper to have the words that he spoke about, the importance it should reach the women that would only understand Yiddish. So I was given the job to make sure that such an ad would go into the paper. Of course, I had no idea how to put an ad in the paper, and I called up to my co-president, but she was very, very busy. She was getting a lot of company. I was basically on my own, and I just asked around, and I was told to speak to a certain man that worked at the newspaper. He was the editor of the newspaper, and I should ask him for advice. And because he knew my family and he felt sorry for me, he said, you know what, Esther, if you give me all the material of what the Rebbe said, I'll make the ad for you. You just get me the material, get it typed up and bring it to my house. I'll never forget. He told me that he leaves at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I have to work on it between now and 4 a.m. tomorrow morning, because then he leaves to the office and the paper is printed tomorrow. And I have to get it to him before he leaves the house at 4 a.m. So I went reaching out to different people that had whatever material that I spoke about already typed up, till I gathered it, till I had it translated. And I remember going to his house at 3 a.m. in the morning, and I put it into the mailbox of his house, which happened to be low down at the bottom of the door. I remember bending down, putting it into the mailbox and thinking that if any police were passing by, it would look like I'm trying to break into this house. And I got very nervous, but there were nobody that caught me. And I just dropped it in the mailbox. And lo and behold, the next afternoon at 5 o'clock, he brought me a finished product. The newspaper was printed with a very beautiful ad. So I wrote to the Rebbe that he did it for me, but because I did the work of getting it to him, I got a very big thanks from the Rebbe, and I felt very good about it. And I realized that, oh, maybe I have to do some more to make the Rebbe happy, if this little thing I did made him so happy. So I was just eager to see what I could do next. The very next thing that happened was, a few days later was Rosh Hashanah, and at the usual address that the Rebbe would give on Rosh Hashanah to all the Hasidim, the Rebbe mentioned that he wants to make sure that every little girl starts to light Shabbos candles, even if it was not something that a tradition in her family, if it was not a tradition in her neighborhood, but because of the importance of bringing more light into the world, the Rebbe wants to urge her to light, and therefore he wants to give her a gift. And the Rebbe said he's going to give her a gift of 2 coins that he is giving of his own. And the 2 coins were of 10 cents each. 10 is a very holy number. We have the 10 commandments. We have Yom Kippur is on the 10th day of the month. Number 10 is very esoteric. And the Rebbe said he wants to give 2 coins of 10 each to every little girl as a gift if she's going to agree to light Shabbos candles. And then the Rebbe said that in other countries, like in Israel or in France or in England, they should go to the bank and get coins with the equivalent of 10 in their whatever money they have there. And he's going to pay for it. So it's going to be a gift from him, even though it's money from France or from Israel or from England, whatever. And so this is what he said on Rosh Hashanah, that anybody that has access to groups of children, like camps or schools or afternoon groups or any kind of groups that children come to, if they will bring a list of little girls, their names and their mother's name, they will get 2 dimes for every child. So right after Rosh Hashanah, I got a call again from the Rebbe's secretary, and he said to me, where should these people go to pick up the dimes, these coins? And I said, you know what, I guess it has to be in my house, because we didn't really have a building that I could ask him to come to. The women's organization, we basically worked from our homes, and we didn't really have an office. So I said, I'll agree to do it from my house. Little did I know that people had come in from Canada already on Thursday to pick it up on Friday. And they came to my house very early that morning because they had to go back to Canada in time for Shabbos. But they were so eager to get the dimes to give to the children that they had contact with because of the schools or the camps or whatever. So I remember giving out many, many dimes. People brought lists of 100, 200, 300 little girls, and I gave out the dimes according to the lists. And on Sunday and Monday, I continued giving out dimes to people who came with the lists of children. And then suddenly we were at Erev Yom Kippur, the day before, the day that Yom Kippur is starting that evening. The Rebbe had a tradition that on the morning or the whole morning, I would say right into the afternoons, I can't say it was just morning, on that, starting from the morning through the afternoon, the Rebbe would give out a piece of honey cake, which symbolized sweetness for a sweet new year, to every single man that would pass by and come and ask for it. And the Rebbe would give a piece of honey cake, which we call lekach. And as he gave the piece of honey cake, he said, you should have a good and sweet new year. Now, that blessing was very, very powerful because it's on the day of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is arriving that evening, and the Rebbe is blessing us with sweet and good year, which we know means a very good year to come. For some reason, which I can't go into now, the Rebbe had once told me that I should also come, even though it was really only men that went. There were no women that went, but I had done something for the Rebbe years earlier, and he said that I should come myself to get that piece of honey cake instead of my husband or my father when I was younger taking for me. So I used to go every year, and the secretaries knew that I was coming, so they would ask the men to move on the side, and I would just walk over and I would get the blessing. And of course, before the blessing, I was standing in awe because it's a very, very powerful blessing. And that particular year, I'm standing near my husband and I'm waiting for the holy words of a good and sweet new year. But instead, the Rebbe said, do you still have enough dimes? And I was in such shock that the Rebbe is talking about money I'm waiting for this blessing for life. I'm waiting for this blessing for a year of good, sweet life. And the guy was talking about money. It didn't make sense to me. And I was like shocked until my husband brought me back to reality. He said, he's talking about the dimes for the little girls. And then I realized that was asking me if I still have enough of these dimes. So I remember going like this and saying, I just have a few left, because I really just had a few left. And the Rebbe proceeded to put his hand into one pocket, and he took out 10 rolls of dimes. You know, when you get it from the bag, they come rolled up in a plastic, 100 dimes to a roll. The Rebbe proceeded to take out 10 rolls of dimes. And I didn't have a pocketbook with me, so I just stuck out my hands, and the Rebbe put it into the palms of my hand. And then he put his second hand into the second pocket and took out another 10 packages. And this time he gave it to my husband because my hands were full already. And the Rebbe said to me, I just didn't want that there should be little girls that want to start lighting. And if they don't get the dimes, they are not going to light. So I want to make sure you have enough dimes. I remember when I heard that, of course, afterwards I got the blessing for the new year and all that. But this incident just taught me how much the Rebbe cared about every little girl, wherever she might be, that she might want to light before Yom Kippur. And if she doesn't get the dimes, she might say, well, if I don't get the dimes, I'm not going to light now. I'm going to wait for the dimes. So the Rebbe didn't want that she shouldn't light for Yom Kippur because there are not enough dimes. And he made sure to give me, although he waited so many hours with these heavy dimes in his pocket, I had no clue that the Rebbe was waiting. And I always used to come later in the afternoon, so it shouldn't be in the morning rush. And I see that I made the Rebbe hold these dimes in his pocket for so long, which in retrospect, I felt very bad about. So this taught me a very big lesson, that the Rebbe cared about every single little girl. And I realized that that's what we have to do. We have to make sure to reach every single woman and every single little girl and every single big girl. So what we did was we made a committee, and we decided we're going to do what people do when you try to influence and do something. You do a lot of advertisement. You just let the word out. You get the word out all over. So we were told that we could get radio time. We could buy radio time, which means you write a script and you go to a radio station and you say you want to buy 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever it is. They call it, trying to remember what they call it now. You buy this slot of time. It's either 30-second slot or 60-second slot, and they're going to read the message for you. You pay a certain amount of money for each slot. So I was told that if I go to NBC, which was one of the most important radio stations, I might be able to get it for free because it's considered a public service. I went with another lady, a very brilliant woman. I figured we're going to work on this, really get something beautiful out of it. And they looked at the script and they liked it very much. And they said, we're sorry, it's not public service because it's a religion and we're going to do it. However, you have to add something commercial because we only accept things if it's commercial. And we didn't know how to add commercial to a mitzvah. A mitzvah is not money. A mitzvah is not commercial. But because we were talking about lighting Shabbos candles, and because we had to add something commercial, we added a line. If you need a set of candle holders, please send us $1 and we will send with your name and address, and we will send you a set of candle holders. The $1 was not going to cover the shipment or the candle holders, but we didn't want to make it seem like we're looking to make money on something, but we had to put something commercial, so we made it just $1. I have to tell you that we received thousands of requests from people, and we found out through this that actually there are many people that knew about lighting candles, but they didn't know where to get candle holders, because yesteryear people would only have silver candle holders. And if they lost it or they got stolen or if they broke, nobody knew where to get something that was cheaper. And people didn't have money to buy silver, or they didn't know where to buy silver, or they just couldn't go buy it. And they stopped lighting candles because they didn't have candle holders. So we found that out really actually by accident. A very interesting story happened. And as I said, we had announced on the radio, they should send us $1. And the name of our organization is Lubavitch Women's Organization. And our address is 770 Eastern Parkway, which is the main office, the main address for Lubavitch. So we figured that's an address everybody knows, and that's the address we gave for our organization. Something very interesting happened to me one Friday, and it was exactly 45 minutes before the time that I had to light my very own candles. And at the time, I was a mother of 7 children. God bless them. I have more than 7, but that time I just had 7. And it was Friday afternoon. Everybody knows how busy everyone, especially the mother of the household, is on Friday afternoon. And I get a call from the Rebbe's secretary that the Rebbe got a letter, and it was addressed to the Lubavitcher rabbi. And that's why he got the letter. It was not addressed to Lubavitch Women's Organization. And the Rebbe himself opened the mail. He never let anybody touch any of his mail. Nobody went through his mail to see if there were any stupid letters or anything. None of the mail was ever touched except by the Rebbe himself. And this particular woman wrote, "Dear Lubavitcher Rebbe, please send me a set of candle holders. Here is $1. Now, it might sound comical that somebody should send $1 to Lubavitcher Rebbe to send candlesticks, but she misheard the radio announcement. When the Rebbe answered, we got that letter, he realized that today's Friday and he wants it to light today. So the Rebbe told his secretary to call me up and tell me that I should see that she lights today. When I got this phone call, I became hysterical because there were 45 minutes left for me to light my own candle. And how in the world am I going to get her candlesticks in 45 minutes? I mean, how can I do that? She didn't have a phone number. So I took the name and address, and I thought I'm going to try to find the number. And maybe she has some sort of candles at home. I don't care what they are. They could be decorating candles. They could be in purple. They could be green. I don't know. I don't care what color. Maybe she could use those. So I called at that time. We used to call 411 for information for a phone number. And lo and behold, there was no number for her. This lady had no phone. So I became hysterical. Rebbe wants her to light today, and I can't speak to her on the phone. And how am I going to get the candlesticks to her? And then I looked at the address again, and I saw that she doesn't live that far away from me. It would take about 13 or 14 minutes to go to her with my car. I guess 13, 14 minutes to come back, about 2-3 minutes to talk to her. So I still had a little leeway for me to go and still come back after giving her the candle holders. So I took 2 of my daughters and a bunch of candlesticks, and I flew down with my car. I don't know if I passed red lights or not. I just know I went so quickly. I left the car double parked across the street from her house. She lived in a very big apartment complex. And I started looking for her apartment. She was on the right side of this apartment complex. I found the door, rang the bell, and rang the bell, and rang the bell. And I could have been still ringing it now because she was not answering. And it dawned on me that maybe she's not home. But how could she not be home? The Rebbe wanted a light today. So she has to be here. I mean, I have to reach her. The Rebbe wanted a light. How could she not be home? So we started ringing bells of all the neighbors next door to her. There was many, many doors, and nobody answered the door. And I was so nervous because the Rebbe wanted a light today, and she's not home. It didn't even dawn on me that it could be such a thing that she won't be home. When we saw that we're not reaching anybody on that side of the building, we went across the lobby, a very, very expansive lobby. And there are many doors on the other side. And we rang every single bell. And suddenly one door opened, and an elderly woman answers the door. She doesn't hear well. So she says, "Yes, how can I help you?" And she's talking so loud. I said, "Oh, I'm looking for Mrs. Herrer." She says, "Oh, I know Mrs. Herrer. I said, well, she's not, I have to speak to her and she doesn't have a phone. She says, oh, she has a phone. It's just not listed. So I figured she really does know Mrs. Hera because she knows it's an unlisted number. That's why they couldn't get the number. So I said, but I have to speak to her. It's so important. And she's not home. She says, oh, she's home. I said, no, nobody answered the bell. She said, oh, because she can't hear the bell. Come, I'll show you what to do. And suddenly she and my two daughters and I, we cross the lobby and we go to Mrs. Hera's house and we bang on the door, all four of us. And suddenly the door opens and there's Mrs. Hera. I said, Mrs. Hera, is that you? And she says, yes. I said, Mrs. Hera, did you write a letter to the Lubavitcher Rebbe that you want to light Shabbos candles? So she says to me in Yiddish, if any of you listening understand the words in Yiddish, she said, Ich will benchen Licht, which is in Yiddish, I want to light Shabbos candles. And I was so taken aback because if this lady knows how to say it in Yiddish, she should be lighting candles. So why does she need my candle holders? Why did I have to come to bring this to her? So I said to her, Mrs. Hera, if you know what it means to bench licht, why do you need my candle holders? So she says, come inside my house. I want to show you something. And it was very late and I was very nervous, but I just went in to see what's going on because this was so bizarre to me. And she shows me, she has this very tall closet. And on the very top shelf of the tall closet, lo and behold, her candle holder are up there on the top shelf. And she says, when I moved to this apartment, my children put my candlesticks all the way on top and they don't come to visit me and I can't take the candlesticks down, so I can't light candles. And I want to bench licht. I want to light candles, but I don't have candle holders. I remember being so shocked at the thought that this woman really wants so badly to light. And the Rebbe must have felt her soul. The Rebbe must have, in the letter when she wrote, please send me candle holders, the Rebbe must have felt her soul begging to light Shabbos candles, but she doesn't have the means, she doesn't have the candle holder. So I quickly gave them to her. And she said, if you call me after Shabbos, I'll give you my phone number. I'll tell you where you can reach so many women like me. We go to the Senior Citizen Center. There's so many women like me that don't have their candle holders anymore. Either they broke or they got stolen or they got lost and they're not lighting because they don't know where to get candle holders. But if you would go to them in the Senior Citizen Centers, you'll make them so happy because they'll be able to light candles. I learned from the Rebbe how we have to look at every single woman that her soul wants so badly to light. Her soul, perhaps she can't physically do it yet. Perhaps physically she doesn't understand. Perhaps physically she doesn't have the knowledge of how. Perhaps physically she doesn't have with what to do it. But her soul wants it so badly. And that's the lesson I learned from the Rebbe then. And that's why we started this campaign in a very, very strong, with a strong fervor that we have to reach out every single week. We send girls and we send women to shopping centers, to schools, to different places where we could reach women and girls and see that they start to light Shabbos candles. So that was the beginning of the campaign. At least as far as I'm concerned, I felt the message, yes, I'm going to show it. I felt the message of how women are very eager. Their soul is very eager. We just have to find them. I was talking about candle holders, and I think I have to explain to you exactly what we're talking about. A candle holder is something that you put the candle in, and that's how you light it. But there's a very interesting story about this candle holder. There's something very unique about it, and I'm going to tell you that. Actually, in the beginning of the campaign, we didn't even realize the scope of what we're going to be doing. We're going to reach out to people. We're going to speak to them. We didn't really think that we have to give them candle holders. I don't know why. We didn't know what was going to be. But just about a week or two after the holidays were over, after Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and Sukkot were over, I got a phone call that was actually addressed to the Rebbe's office, and they sent them to me. A Rabbi Reuben, that was the principal of a Talmud Torah. Talmud Torah is a school where children go to after public school. These are children that don't have religious instruction during the day. And 3 times a week, they go to, like you would call Hebrew school. It's called Talmud Torah or Hebrew school, where they go in the afternoon. And this Rabbi Reuben had a school in Brooklyn, right near King's Plaza. And he said that he heard that the Rebbe wants that even young girls should light candles. And he said, I really could go and buy candle holders for these children. But I think if it came from you, from Lubavitch, I will have more success. I can really buy it on my own, but if I got it from Lubavitch, it would be more successful. And I was ashamed to tell him that Lubavitch didn't even buy any candle holders. We didn't even think we need candle holders. We didn't realize it. I was ashamed to say I don't have any. So I said to him, well, I expect a shipment by the end of the week. Could you wait until Thursday? I figured give me some time to get hold of candle holders for him, because I was ashamed to tell him we didn't have any. And he said, oh, Thursday would be perfect, because that's when most of the children come. So I said, how many girls go to your school? And he said, I have 80 girls. I said, okay, I'll have somebody come the Thursday afternoon, and we're going to bring you candlesticks for all the girls in the school. As soon as I hung up from Rabbi Reuben, I sat down with a telephone book. Those of you still remember what a telephone book is, the yellow pages that you can know all the businesses that there are. And I started looking for candle holders, candlesticks. And lo and behold, nobody produces candle holders or candlesticks. And I'm leafing through all the pages, trying to figure out where in the world am I going to buy candle holders. And I reached a page that is actually a company called Anchor Hacking that make things out of glass, like glass pitchers and glass Pyrex baking pans and cup mugs and glasses, all kinds of things out of glass. And it had a whole page with pictures of what they produce. And in the middle of the page was a little star candle holder. And I remember that I had seen it very often. If I went to a bar mitzvah or something, in those days, they would have a little candle holder that looked like a star, perhaps like a Magen David or a star. And you would put in a candle, and you would usually put a candle that matched the decor. So sometimes it was a gold candle, sometimes it was a red candle. And it was just a decorating piece. It wasn't really meant for Shabbat candles, but maybe it was. And I decide, okay, I'm going to buy that, because that's the only kind of candle holder I can find. I remember calling them up, and they're a very big company, and they refused to talk to me because I'm not a distributor. And they gave me names of distributors, and I had to go through distributors that should want to sell to me, because I'm just buying some and they want to sell thousands. So I ended up having to buy much, much more than I thought I would need. But I bought them for this Rabbi Reuben. And I had one of the girls from our school pack up 100 kits. There's 80 girls, but I thought maybe if a girl has a sister, she wants to take her sister, so I'm going to send her 100. And we packed up the glass candle holder. We put a candle in it, and we had a paper that we had copied. We had photocopied the blessing in English in case they don't know how to say the bracha, the blessing. And we also wrote the times to light the candles to make sure they know that candles have to be lit 18 minutes before sundown. And the candles cannot be lit after sunset. And that message had to be made very clear that you could only light at the right time. So I had 2 girls from school go down to this Talmud Torah with 100 of the candlesticks. And I was so happy. I took care of Rabbi Reuben. Little did I know that on Monday, Rabbi Reuben is going to call back and say, Mrs. Sternberg, I need 100 more. I said, Rabbi Reuben, I sent you 100 instead of 80. Why do you need another 100? He says, you don't know what happened. The children in the neighborhood that don't even go to my school, they got jealous that their friends told them that they lit Shabbos candle, and they said they also want. So they're knocking on my door. Rabbi, please give me a candlestick. Rabbi, I also want to light candles. So I need 100 more for children that don't even go to my school. So I got very excited. I said, I see now what we have to do. We have to go to the children themselves, and we have to give them a gift. We have to give them a candlestick. and we give them the information. And if they start to light, they're going to get their mothers to light. They're going to get their grandmothers to light. We get the children excited. And I was so excited about that idea. And we ended up buying some more of these candle holders until a very wonderful man, he should live be well, he's very, very up there in his 90s at this time. He's a wonderful man. He had a business of making things out of metal. It was called a metal stamping company. His name is Mr. Kupferstein. And I have to thank him so much. Because of him, I was a business. I mean, so to speak. It's a spiritual business, but it was a business. He said he's going to make candle holders for us in a very inexpensive way, so we could distribute it all over New York, all over New Jersey, wherever, reach children, reach mothers, and give them candle holders. And he went and he designed a certain candle holder, and he called me to a meeting and asked me how many I think I could use. And I remember him telling me he made 100,000 pieces. And I said, I don't know if I'm going to use so many. Little did I know that I used 250,000 pieces the next 6 months, but I didn't realize at the time. I thought 100,000 is probably be enough for 10 years, but I didn't realize what we're going to still accomplish. However, the candle holder he made was actually not something that was good for us, because it was something pretty, according to his opinion. He said it was modern art. It happened to be tall. It was about 8 inches tall, and it was on a very narrow base. And I did not think it was a good idea to give children something so tall, but this is what he made. And he said he made 100,000 pieces already. So we just took them, I bought them, and we started distributing it to children in school. And right away, within a week or two, I got a message from the Rebbe's office that we should produce a sticker that the child could put on the base, on the bottom of the candle holder, where she could write her name and the name of the school she goes to. And the Rebbe said that that is going to increase the principal's interest in the candle lighting campaign, because when the principals see that the name of the school is written on the candle holder, and people at home will see it, so the school will get credit for it. So the Rebbe said I should have somebody produce such a sticker. So I went to a company, and I was so excited. Within one day, they produced a very beautiful sticker. And they put the sticker on the candle holder, and I brought it to the Rebbe's office to show him. And I was so proud that he asked me for something this morning, and already by evening, I had it produced. And my happiness was very short-lived, because within 5 minutes of me bringing this candle holder with the sticker, I get a call from the Rebbe's office that the Rebbe wants to know, with what right am I distributing a candle holder that is not safe? And I must stop using this right away, because the candle holder seems to be unstable. I remember that I burst out crying. That was the first thing that happened, because I was doing everything just to make the Rebbe happy. And that was my whole goal. And the Rebbe saying it's unsafe. And then I realized that I had never showed him the original candle holder, just because I was in such a hurry to give them out. I was so happy we had candle holders. I was just rushing to give them out to schools. We made appointments to visit the schools. And I never showed it to the Rebbe for his approval, because I was just so rushed. And here the Rebbe noticed that it looked too flimsy. It was too tall, and the base was too narrow for it to be stable. And the Rebbe said I should not use them, because they could be dangerous. So the first thing is I burst out crying. And the next thing I did, I tried to get hold of this man to tell him he has to make a different style. And it was a whole thing to get hold of him. The people that were dealing with him wanted to keep it a secret. They wanted to have, I don't know what it was. And I know that I suffered for the next 4 days that felt to me like 4 years, because I didn't have a way to reach him. They wouldn't tell me his number, and they said they're going to take care of it. And I just felt terrible that I can't do anything with these candle holders, until finally I got hold of him through another way. And he said nobody called him and he doesn't know what to do. I said, you have to make something that is stable, that it doesn't have a way, it won't be able to tip over. The Rebbe feels that this one is too tall and the base was too narrow, it could tip over. And I said, take a look when you set it on the table. If you just push it a little bit, it can tip over very easily. So he said, I don't even know what to do. So he said, he's going to make 5 different styles, and we should show it to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe should choose one of the 5. So what happened was, I was not in the room when the Rebbe saw the 5. I just know that this candle holder is a result of the Rebbe saying that the cap should be from one model of the 5 different models. The cap of one is what the Rebbe chose should be the cap. This circular middle part was from a second model, a different candle holder. And this base, which is about 4.5 inches in circumference, so when it's on the table, it's very stable, is from a third model. So the Rebbe took from one candle holder one part, from another model another part, and from a third one another part, and gave us this design. So this design was started to be made, I would say it must have been November of 1975. Until today, we are making the same candle holder because that's what the Rebbe designed, and this is what we're giving out. As a matter of fact, we gave out so many of these that there are so many people today that talk about getting this gold candle holder when they were little children, and they want to get them for their grandchildren. And I have so many letters from people, if we still can perhaps tell them where they can get the same candle holder that they got when they were young, they would like to give it to their grandchildren. I even got a letter from a lady that lives somewhere in Maine, in a very little city in Maine, and she wrote to me 2 years ago that even though her daughter's married and she got beautiful candle holders from her husband, she prefers to use this candle holder that she got when she was 3 years old that we gave her when she was in school. And the next year, there was a big hurricane in Florida where her daughter lives. And she wrote to me that when my daughter was packing up her immediate essential things to run away from the hurricane, the first thing she packed up was the gold candle holder that she received from you when she was 3 years old, because she wasn't going to go anywhere without that when she was running away from the hurricane. So there's a lot of history in the gold candle holder. We have distributed, according to Mr. Kupferstein, he claims that he made over 8 million of these candle holders for us. He's very proud of it, and he's very honored that the Rebbe was very happy with him, and the Rebbe was very, always spoke about him because he did it with a lot of love. He actually had to hire a staff to work 24 hours a day. He had 3 shifts because we needed the candlesticks. We were giving them out like rainwater. We were going to so many schools, and people from all over the United States were ordering them. So we just needed so many, and he couldn't even manufacture them quick enough. So we had 3 shifts working, 8-hour shifts, just to supply us with the candle holders that we needed. He's very proud about that. I want to just tell you that we have seen over the years how many lives have changed because of this candle lighting campaign. You have to understand that when a woman or even a girl starts to light a candle and looks into the flame and looks at the holy flame. Now, this was a physical candle, and a physical match lit the candle. But what was produced was a spiritual, beautiful flame. Even though it's a physical flame, but there's a spirituality to it that everybody feels. And just by looking at the flame, you feel the spirituality. You feel something holy. And you can't just walk away and say, okay, I lit the candle, fine. There's something that happens to you. And you realize that you brought light into this world. You brought holiness into this world. I'm going to tell you a story that just shows you that even non-Jewish people realize the holiness of Shabbos candles. I'll never forget this story. It was a young girl. She was about 19, and she had a damage to her nose that had broke a few years ago, and she had to have surgery, corrective surgery. And she called me up to say that she wrote a letter to the Rebbe that she's going to the hospital for the surgery, and at those days, they kept you in the hospital much longer than today, and she was going to be staying until Monday. The surgery was Thursday, and she stayed until Monday. And the Rebbe gave her blessing, and the Rebbe added the words, "Surely you light Shabbos candle." And she said to me, "Why do you think the Rebbe said that? I know that I have to light. Why does he have to remind me? I'm sort of insulted that he feels that he has to remind me." So I said to her, "Don't be insulted. I think what the Rebbe wants you to do is to plan what's going to be if you're there for Shabbos and hospitals don't let you light a fire. So plan what to do. Maybe the Rebbe wanted to prepare you. It's still time to think of what you're going to do." So she said, "Oh, you're so right. So what should I do?" So I said, "Well, some hospitals let you light because they have places where there's no oxygen. There's a place where it could be safe. Some don't let you light. So let me tell you what I was told the rabbis say. The rabbi said that if you cannot light in the hospital because it's too dangerous and the hospital doesn't allow, you may light any switch. You may open a switch just like you're turning the light on the room with a switch, or you can turn on a flashlight and you can say the blessing because you are causing light. You can only do it in a situation like that, like in an emergency, like in the hospital where you can't light a fire, but you can say the blessing if you light, you light the switch or light a flashlight." So I said to her, "I would suggest that you take a candle and a candle holder and take a flashlight and light the flashlight, light your candle, and if they want to blow it out, at least the flashlight will still be burning. So maybe they'll let it burn, maybe they won't let it burn, but you'll have the flashlight just in case they blow it out." She said, "Okay, I'm going to do that." She calls me up after Shabbos and she's laughing and she can't stop laughing. I said, "What happened? What's so funny?" She said, "Well, I was there with my sister. My sister wanted to be with me. So we had 2 candles and 2 flashlights. And we opened the flashlights and we lit the candles and we said the blessing. 5 minutes later, the nurse walks in and she said, "You have to blow out the candle. We're not going to have fire in the room." And she said, "There's no oxygen here. There's no danger. It's on the windowsill. There's nothing that can catch fire. I'm sorry, no fire allowed in the hospital." So the girl said to the nurse, "Well, I can't blow it out because in our religion, we're not allowed to. We'll get a sin, but you can blow it out." And the nurse says, "I should get a sin? I don't want to get a sin. You blow it out." And the girl said, "But we're not allowed to blow it out, but you are allowed to blow it out." She says, "I don't want to get a sin. I'm not going to blow it out. I'm calling the supervisor." So they figured, okay, the supervisor's going to come and the supervisor will blow it out. The supervisor comes in and she says, "I'm sorry, you can't have a fire here." And they said, "Well, okay, so you can blow it out, but we're not allowed. Why can't you blow it out?" So the girl said, "Well, we'll get a sin because we're not permitted on the Sabbath, but you can blow it out." "You want me to get the sin? I don't want to get the sin." And the supervisor walked out and the candles burned until they finished burning till late at night. Just to show you that they didn't want to be cursed or get a sin by blowing out the Shabbos candle. I remember once being in the hospital with a problem with my back, and I had 2 candles that I was going to light. I was going to put them in the sink, and there was no way that a fire could start anywhere because the sink was a deep sink and there was nothing near it. So I figured I'm just going to light my candles there and nothing will happen. But there was another lady in the room, not Jewish, and I was afraid that this other lady would be offended that I'm having fire in the room. And a whole Friday, I'm so nervous thinking, what should I do? I have to light candles. I'm not going to not light, but this lady might become hysterical and call the nurse or call the police, and I don't know what to do. So a whole Friday, I'm wondering, should I ask her? Should I tell her? Should I try to influence her? And I didn't know what to do until finally I got enough courage and I said to the daughter of the patient, I said, "I want to tell you something. We have a tradition that we light candles in honor of the Sabbath, something very special, and it brings a lot of blessings." And I said, "I'm going to light in the sink. There's no danger. I just want to tell you in advance, you shouldn't get upset, but I'm doing it in a very safe way." She said, "Oh, I'm so happy to be in a holy room. you're going to light holy candles, and I'm going to be blessed by these holy candles. I think that's beautiful. I remember being so relieved. I just couldn't believe it. A whole Friday, I'm nervous. What am I going to say to this lady? And here she was so happy about it that she was thanking me for letting her be in a room that's so holy. Just telling you about that. Let's get back to other people that were so affected by lighting candles. I have a story that happened to me a few years ago. I was at an airport and I missed, my plane was delayed, so I missed my connecting flight. I was going to a very special gathering, and it looked like I'm going to miss this gathering, and I'm going to spend 24 hours at the airport with no connection. It was in Ukraine, and it was a very, very difficult situation. And I'm so upset and so blue. And suddenly my phone rings. I didn't even realize that I'm in Ukraine. I shouldn't be answering my New York phone, but I did. And a friend of mine calls me up and she said, "Oh, hi, Esther, how are you?" And I like was so surprised she's calling me. I said, "You're in such a good mood, but I'm stuck over here." And then she says to me, "I have such an interesting story to tell you." I said, "Okay, maybe you'll cheer me up." And she tells me that this unbelievable story. And I'm sitting on a couch and she tells me that her son went to pay a shiva call, that somebody in his community lost their mother. And as he's sitting there talking to the son, he hears from the room where the ladies are sitting that a woman says, "Because of a candle, our whole family became religious." And everybody gets quiet because nobody understands what that means. Because of a candle. How does a candle make the whole family religious? And everybody got quiet. And the woman goes on to say that when she was a little girl, she was stopped by somebody who gave her a candle holder and a pamphlet, told her about lighting candles. And because of that, as a result, the whole family became religious. And somehow something reminded me, and I said, "What's the name of the woman who passed away?" And when she told me, I remembered exactly what happened years ago, that a woman by this name had called me up and wanted to know, who are we that gave out these candle holders? Why do I care that she lights candles? And I told her it's Lubavitch Rebbe who wants every woman to light candles. The world needs the light. We need the holiness. And this woman was very surprised. And she said she didn't light ever, and her mother didn't light, but she remembered her grandmother used to light. And then we started talking, and I told her what to do. And she said, "It would be beautiful if you're telling me what to do. I'd love to do this." And she looked at the pamphlet where it had the blessing in English, and she was so happy. And she said she was going to light, and she was going to have her daughter light. And then she went on to speak about her children, that the school is over now, and she's afraid that they're going to get into trouble over the summer because they don't have what to do. I said to her, "How old are your children?" And she says, "I have a son who's turning 13 August 15th. And she didn't say he's turning bar mitzvah. And it dawned on me that she doesn't even realize he's having bar mitzvah. And I said, the other children, she told me their ages. I said, "Would you think of putting them in a Jewish summer camp?" And she said, "Yes, but I don't have the money and I don't even know where." Anyway, to make a long story short, I called a few people and we decided we have to get these children into a summer camp because they're Jewish children and they're in a neighborhood where there are no other Jewish children, and who knows what's going to happen over the summer. And this boy has to have a bar mitzvah. So I arranged for a camp to take him in. I called up to the director of the camp and I said, "I have a project for you. If you take in this boy and you teach him everything about what he has to do for bar mitzvah, and you have all the children working on it, and they're going to plan the bar mitzvah together, it's going to be a project that the whole camp is working on. And they will be excited. You'll make this grand bar mitzvah where all the children are going to pitch in." And the director accepted this child free. And we put the other two children in day camp, in Jewish day camp. Lo and behold, these children did not want to go back to public school at the end of the summer because they had such a beautiful Jewish summer. They learned so much about Judaism. They didn't want to go to public school. And the mother called me. She says, "What should I do now?" and she moved to another neighborhood and she put the children in yeshiva, and the whole family are totally observant. They keep every mitzvah. The two boys, they have beards. The woman that was telling a story covers her hair like I do with a wig, completely covered. She lives in Chicago, and the children go to Jewish schools, all because of that one candle that somebody gave her, and her mother wanted to know what this is about, and her mother followed through. They started lighting candles, and they brought Yiddishkeit, they brought Jewish heritage back into their home. There are so many stories that happen like this, and very often we don't hear these stories for many years to come, because the girls or the women that are going around and trying to influence people to light, they sometimes, people say to them, well, I'm really not interested, leave me alone, it's, it's not your business. Some people are very rude, some people are very insulted, some people just are not interested. But you can never know, maybe an hour later or a week later or a month later, that person is going to rethink and say, maybe it's something I should think about. And we have so many stories how people later, afterthought, said, maybe I will light the candle, maybe I will think about it. I had a lady once somebody called me up on a Friday, and she said, I wonder if you can help me. I'm going to North Carolina on Sunday, and I just recently started lighting Shabbat candles because of your organization. And I wanted to give my grandchildren in North Carolina some candle holders that they should light. Could I come and pick some up? And I remember being very embarrassed because everything was going on for my house at the time. This was the very beginning. We were on a small scale. Everything was in my house. It was Friday. I'm in the middle of cooking, I'm in the middle of cleaning up. And this lady wants to come pick up candle holders. So I said, okay, come. And in walks in a woman that was dressed to the T. Her hat matched her pocketbook, that matched her shoes. Exactly, they were the same material. It was like incredible the way she was dressed, a very fancy woman. She's walking into my kitchen, I'm in the middle of cooking for Shabbos, and she wants a few candle holders. She said, I have to tell you a secret. Every time somebody met me in the street and they asked me if they could speak to me about lighting Shabbos candles, I said, I'm not interested. Leave me alone. Leave me alone. It's not for me. It's not for me. And she said to herself, this is what she told me. If they're going to come after me 100 times, on the 100th time, I'm going to say yes. But 100 times let them come, I'm not going to say. And today, or last week, they came to you, was the 100th time. And I decided to take it. And I lit the candles. And I felt so good about it that now I want my grandchildren to do it. I don't know if she ever had 100 people meet her. Maybe it was 50, maybe it was 40, but it was enough for her to realize she's saying no and no and no. And then suddenly she decided, maybe I will. And she did. And she wanted them for her grandchildren. So I gave her for her grandchildren. 2 weeks later, I get a phone call from a lady. She lives in North Carolina. And she said that her mother was just here 2 weeks ago and brought candlesticks for her daughters. And we are all lighting Shabbat candles. So my husband said he thinks that he should put on tefillin. Now, men put on tefillin, the black box that they put on their head and on their hand. And he decided that he should be putting on tefillin. But he didn't know where to buy any in North Carolina. This goes back so many years ago that they didn't have Judaica stores there. So she called me to ask on the phone number of the candlelighting campaign. And I remember sending her the tefillin. Of course, she paid for it. And the husband started putting on tefillin because the girls were lighting candles and they started keeping Shabbat. And slowly they became observant Jewish people. I have to excuse myself for a quarter of a second. I have to light a candle in honor of my grandfather's yahrzeit that is just now. It's going to take me one day.
Can you just say his name real fast? His full name?
His name is Avram Yehoshua Heschel. He was a Kopitchnitz Rebbe, Ben Reb Yitzchak Meir.
May his neshama have the highest aliyah. What a merit that we have you share on your grandfather's yahrzeit. I just want to add that it's so amazing how the Rebbe cared about every single person. A woman in Brooklyn who wrote a letter that she wanted to light Shabbat candles, and he chose Mrs. Sternberg because he knew she'll get it done, to go Erev Shabbos a few minutes before to bring her the candlesticks. And I was just blown away by that deed that the Rebbe did. He went ahead and the Rebbe took care of a woman and sent Mrs. Sternberg Erev Shabbos to get her to light Shabbos candles. And as a result, so many women started lighting Shabbos candles. I just want to add before Mrs. Sternberg continues, she spoke on our class a few years back, and it was very special and wonderful. And I asked her to come back again. And she spoke about the candles. I have one myself. And one of the ladies on the class, she's a surgeon, a doctor, and she reached out to Mrs. Sternberg because she also wanted to give all the people in the hospital candles. And you don't have to be a shlucha to give out candles. You don't have to be someone that goes, anybody can do it. And we should add more light into the world. So if you would like to get candlesticks and kits, you can reach out to me and I'll connect you to Mrs. Sternberg. And together we're going to light up the world because we need more light. Mrs. Sternberg, I'm just going to ask you one question before you continue. Many people that I come in contact with, I recommend that they should light Shabbos candles. It brings more light. It brings more light into the world for the world, but it also brings light into the person's personal life. And it's a direct connection with Hashem. When you light, you're literally connecting with God. You're making a phone call to Hashem, a direct call, and you can ask Hashem, God, for whatever you want and your need and what's on your heart. And a couple of people said to me, this is not our custom. And I want to know how you would answer that to people that feel that their custom is that they only start lighting Shabbat candles when they're married. The Lubavitcher Rebbe was very encouraging from a child from age 3 to start lighting candles because a child understands. So if you can just explain that before you just continue for our listeners who don't consider themselves with the custom of lighting candles from age 3, it would be very insightful to hear.
Okay, I'm glad you brought that up. I'll tell you something very interesting. When I was a young girl, I remember when I started lighting, and I always thought it was Lubavitch minhag, a Lubavitch custom, and I did not know if other people in other walks of life also light Shabbos candles. But a very interesting thing happened just a week after the campaign started. My parents had this custom that every 2 or 3 years they went to the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota, to get a full body workup. They would make an appointment, and in 10 days you were checked out by cardiologists and by all kinds of doctors and nutritionists, and they would tell you what kind of life you should lead to be healthy or whatever. That's what they used to do. And I remember my mother called me up on the first Shabbos night, after Shabbos of the week she was there. And she says, you know, Esther, the Lubavitcher Rebbe has such a wonderful idea about this, getting women to light Shabbos candles. And I said, oh, of course, you know, he has wonderful ideas. She said, but I can't tell you what happened. You know, we all live in this hotel, and during the day you go to the clinic for all the tests, and then you live in the hotel and you wait for your next appointment. And on Friday, I noticed a woman, and she's sitting and crying. And anybody who knows my mother, she was the type of person that if she saw somebody crying, she would just go over and ask, why are you crying, even if she didn't know this person. And the woman started crying and telling her that she got a very bad diagnosis and she has very little time to live. And my mother asked her her name and realized that she's a Jewish woman. So my mother said, I have an idea for you. When you light candles this evening, you pray to God. It's a private time to pray to God, and you ask him for a miracle. God can make miracles. When you light your candles, you cover your eyes and pray with your whole heart, and you'll see God can make a miracle. So she said, but I don't know how to light. I never did. So my mother told her that she knows in the hotel, they have a grocery downstairs. and they sell candle holders, they sell candles, they sell matzah, they sell jars of gefilte fish. They have all kinds of things, provisions for people that come in the last minute to this Mayo Clinic. And my mother told her how the blessing, and she wrote down the words of the blessing, but she didn't know how to say the words in Hebrew, and my mother spelled it out for her. And that's what happened Friday. Shabbos afternoon, my mother sees a woman looking and looking in the hall, in the lobby. She's looking, and she sees it's the same woman that was crying, and she's looking for somebody. She was looking for my mother. And my mother went over to her, and she gives my mother the biggest kiss. And she says, you don't know what a miracle happened. It's all because of the Shabbos candles. You don't know what a miracle. And my mother said, what? She said, I got a call this morning, and the doctor said, I'm sorry, we mixed up your scans with somebody else's, and you are perfectly well. There's nothing wrong with you. We mixed it up with another patient. Go home, have a happy life. There's nothing wrong with you. She says, I don't think it was a mistake. I think that God made a miracle because I promised him when I lit the candles, I promised him I was going to be a good Jew. And because I promised him, he made a miracle. So my mother said to me, give a look, what a wonderful idea. This woman feels that because she made a promise to God, he did this miracle. So I said to my mother, well, that's about married women, but how are we going to get girls to light if it was not their tradition? So my mother said, why do you say it's not their tradition? My mother does not come from Lubavitch home. My mother comes from Polish home, from very, very religious people. Her father, I just told you, was a very holy man. He was actually a Rebbe also from the Polish dynasty. And she told me that she lit candles as a girl. I said, Mommy, you never told me you lit as a girl. She said, of course I lit as a girl. We just never discussed it. And she told me about all her cousins. And these cousins are all Rebbitzins in their communities, heads of various dynasties. And all of them, she said, we all lit candles. And I remember being so surprised because I never heard that other people lit. I thought it was only Lubavitch. So I wrote to our Rebbe, and I wrote him this story, and he said that he's asking me to do research on where else they lit candles so that I can spread the word that in other places, in other dynasties, they also lit candles. And I called up to various Rebbitzins in the name of my mother, because she was related to a lot of them. And each one told me the same story. Yes, we all lit candles as girls. Our children till today, they all light candles before the wedding, but we don't tell our followers. It's only in the family of the Rebbes. I said, well, why don't you tell your followers? And they didn't have an answer. It was only our Rebbe that did. Now, this was not only in the Hasidic courts. I found out that it was also in the Lithuanian courts, but those were not Hasidic. And we are told that even the Lithuanian courts, the girls all lit candles. And then we were told of the secret of why so many people don't know that girls used to light. Because when World War I broke out, it was very difficult for candles to be obtained because candles are made from paraffin. And paraffin and gasoline are the same material. And they needed all the gasoline for the war effort. It was World War I. They had all these tanks and trucks, and they needed all the gasoline. So they stopped making candles. And women had a shortage of candles to light for themselves. And the Rebbe went on to say that if there were two women living in one home, let's say a grandmother and a mother living in the same home, only one would light because there weren't enough candles. And not only that, they had to cut the candles into small pieces because they didn't know if next week they'll be able to even buy candles because there was such a shortage. So all the girls stopped lighting all the way to the time of World War I. They stopped lighting because there was a shortage of candles. And the tradition was not started again until the Rebbe came out with it, because it stopped because of the shortage. And then everybody sort of forgot about it. There was war and so much to run away from and so much to worry about. And they didn't pick up on this mitzvah. A second thing that the Rebbe said, that even if it was not a tradition of the family, there are so many things that were not traditions years ago, but with time, it became important. For instance, girls used to not learn Torah. They used to have yeshivas for boys, but there was nothing for girls because they didn't think girls have to learn Torah. Girls had to cook, girls had to clean. In those days, if you wanted to make a chicken for Shabbos, you had to go find a chicken, walk for miles and miles. There were no buses or trains to buy a chicken. And then you would take it to a ritual slaughterer for him to slaughter it. And then you had to take the feathers off the chicken. And then you had to salt and kosherize the chicken. And there was so much work into preparing just one chicken for Shabbos that the girls were busy a whole week helping at home and cooking. There wasn't even time for them to learn. And then as the Industrial Revolution started and people didn't have to do so much work at home, girls were wandering in the streets or going to the center of town and walking around and having fun, girls and boys or whatever. And they were starting to do things that were not proper. And somebody said, you know what? They have to start having schools for girls. They have to teach them because they're not so busy at home anymore. And when they have nothing to do in a void, it's not good. So they started to have schools for girls, which was against tradition of many people. The girls should learn. They didn't feel the girls should be learning. And they started having schools for girls because the times changed. So our Rebbe said, just like there were times when people didn't read a newspaper, they didn't know how to read it, or they didn't think it was too secular to bring in the house. Now everybody brings a newspaper. They want to know what's going on in the world. Times change and we need more light. We need more spirituality. So even if it was not a custom in your family, but today's times need the spirituality. We need, and we see that if we start a child at a young age, light Shabbos candles, hopefully she'll grow up and she'll remember to light the candles. And I have to tell you a story that is exactly this story. Many years ago, and I might have to do it at another Zoom meeting, the Rebbe asked me to make a book of compositions that girls wrote about how they feel about lighting Shabbos candles. And we made a contest and we offered prizes. And girls from all different walks of life wrote how they feel about lighting candles. And we got an adorable composition from a little girl. She was 6 years old. She went to public school. She didn't even go to a Jewish school, but she got hold of a candle holder. Maybe we met her somewhere. I don't know how she got it. And she wrote something very cute about how happy she is that she lights candles. And at the time of lighting candles, she thanks God for all the good things in her life. I remember getting so excited from that composition because most people talk about when we light candles, we pray to God for something that we need. We pray for good things to happen to us. And this girl is writing about thanking God. So I decided we're going to put this into the book. And we put it into the book, we printed it. And years go by, phones will ring like that. Years go by, and one day I get a phone call from a brother of mine that has a Chabad house upstate New York. And he asked me if I know a certain name. He tells me the last name of somebody. And I said, is her first name Karen Sue? And he says, yes, how do you know? I said, oh, I'll tell. I know, it doesn't matter how I know. How do you know her? So he said, well, she comes to my Chabad house and she now became so religious that she can't walk. She can't drive to the Chabad house Friday night. So she sleeps in my house. And so she could be with us at the Chabad house for Friday night meals. And one night she was looking through the bookcase and she found this book, the book that I had published called A Candle of My Own, where these girls wrote how they feel about lighting candles. And he said, this girl showed me that her composition is in the book. I said, yes, I put it in the book and I know the girl. And so he said, well, you're not going to believe it. She's so religious today. And I said to her, how is it you became so religious? And she said, well, I got a candle holder and I decided to light, although my mother never lit. Every Friday I lit the candle. And even when we went away for the Shabbat, I took it with me wherever we went, and I always lit candles. And it just came to a point that I was going to college, and I'm still lighting. And then I heard you were giving Torah classes, so I joined the Torah classes. I figured if I'm lighting candle for Shabbat, I should learn more about Shabbat. And that's how I became so religious now. So the Rebbe said, this is one of the things the Rebbe said, that this is a time now where we are teaching children something that hopefully this will bring them to become more religious. They're starting as little children, they can start to light candle, they'll start to keep something Shabbat, and hopefully this is going to bring them to a higher level. And even though they might have not needed it years ago, the times need it now because the world was in such a dark place. So that's the answer about if it was not a tradition in the past, it's something that's very much needed now. And those who wonder that it was not a tradition, it definitely was a tradition, one that was lost because of the war and is being renewed. And as I started, if you remember those people who watched the video in the beginning, how the Rebbe gave a blessing and said, the mazel will be brightened of all those who start to light candles. The mazel will be brightened by those who light and those who influence others to light. That is a direct quote from the Rebbe. That was a direct blessing from the Rebbe, and that will definitely happen to all those that work on influencing other people to light Shabbos candles and those who start to light because of this campaign. Now, I think my time is up, and I perhaps will share one more little story because I don't want to go off one more little story. I'll just tell you something very interesting. We were looking for ways to reach people. And somebody told us about this radio program on Friday. I think he had it every day. Somebody called Dr. Meltzer. Now, I don't know if he was a doctor. I don't know who he was, but he was a man that had a program that people asked him for advice. And he would give advice about all kinds of things. And people would ask him questions and he would give advice, and they really trusted him. So we decided it's a very good idea to have our message read by him because he sounds like a person, everybody listens to him. So maybe they'll listen to him about lighting Shabbat candles. So we paid for a spot, a 60-second spot, and he read it. What happened was that the person heard Dr. Meltzer, his name was Dr. Bob Meltzer. Dr. Meltzer told them to light Shabbos candles. Now, he didn't really tell them. He read our message. But in their mind, Dr. Meltzer told them to. And they really trusted him so much that they got very excited. I once get a phone call. A lady says, hello, I wonder if you could help me. Dr. Meltzer told me that I should light Shabbat candles. You see, I really want to light, but the problem is I don't know how to say the blessing. And I don't like to say it in English, and I can't read Hebrew. But Dr. Meltzer said it's so important to light. So how could you help me? And she's so nervous about it. I said, I'll be very glad to send you a little pamphlet that has the blessings in transliteration. You'll be reading the Hebrew words in English, and you'll be able to say the blessing. She says, but I don't want you to know who I am because I should be lighting candles, and I'm not. I'm embarrassed you should know who I am. I said, but if I send you a letter in the mail, I don't know who you are, and I'm talking to you on the phone, I don't know who you are. So just give me an address to send it to. Oh, no, I can't do that. I'm too embarrassed. I mean, it was really ironic because I was never going to know who she was. So I finally came up with a solution that there's a synagogue on her block. And I told her, give me the address of the synagogue, and I'm going to send them a package of about 50 of these brochures and ask them to leave it out on a counter for people to take it. And you'll take it, and nobody will know you're taking it, and you'll be able to say the blessing. So she was very happy about that because she was going to be anonymous. And she gave me the address of the synagogue, and I sent it. And that was the end of my connection with this lady because she never told me her name. But 2 years later, she called me up. And the only reason I know who she was because she told me the story about Dr. Meltzer. I don't know if you remember me, she said, but Dr. Meltzer told me to light candles, and I didn't know how to say the blessing. And I told you that I don't know how to say the blessing. So you sent the pamphlets to the synagogue. So I remembered the whole story. Well, thanks to you, I learned how to read the blessing in Hebrew. And I decided to take classes in learning to read Hebrew because there was another lady who also took a pamphlet and she said, I don't know how to say the blessing in Hebrew. So we together started taking lessons in learning to read Hebrew so we could learn to pray from a siddur, we should pray from a prayer book. So that was the continuation of somebody who heard a message on the radio about lighting Shabbos candles, and that brought her to learn how to read so she could go to shul and she can say her prayers like all Jewish people should. So that is some of the stories of the success of reaching out to people. And that's why I'm speaking to you today to urge you, if you can reach out to anybody, even if you think that they might not be interested, try. Maybe they will. Maybe their soul is really crying out and it's just not making loud enough noise for you to hear it. And you have to try to penetrate that soul. And I assure you, you'll be very happy you did. So good night, everybody, and good luck. I wish you all everything good. Be well.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Sternberg. That was a real treat. We heard literally from the woman that started the Neshek campaign with the guidance and from the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and how amazing it is, because you got to hear and see so many of your stories that the seeds that you planted. You got to see the beautiful trees and flowers and plants, and it's unbelievable. And I'm going to urge everyone, when you're lighting Shabbat candles this week, it's a custom before lighting Shabbat candles to put tzedakah in the tzedakah box, charity, coins in the tzedakah box. And when you're doing that, I'm going to ask everyone to please save the two following names. My dear friend's mom, who needs a complete refuah shlema, and she will have it with the merit of us all bringing more light into the world. Chana Leah Sarabat Tesha Gittel, Raphael Chai Meir Ben Sima Chasha, Yosef Yitzchak Ben Bela, and all Klal Yisrael. We're going to also conclude with a quote that was given by a friend, a Yelet, and this quote is in memory of Freda Bluma Bas Shlomo, and this quote is also a quote of the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Your home should become a light that illuminates the entire street and community. So ladies, we can make it happen. All we have to do is turn on the light Shabbat candles. It will make our homes brighter. It will make our communities brighter, and it will definitely bring more light into our lives. We're going to conclude with a beautiful, beautiful video. So look at the screen. Give me one moment while we do that.
A kleine Mädel von 5, 6 Jahren, wo sie gegangen in Beis HaSefer, und dort in der Beis HaSefer, wo sie nicht in der Tee, in Eretz HaKodesh. Und dort ist gekommen eine zweite Mädel und hat erzählt, dass sie da Asami Ninien und Asami Mitzvah von der Blockes Nere Shabbos Kodesh sagen, hat die und die Broche und eben sie willen geben noch ein Bruttelis Doko. Und durch den wird sie reinführen, die Minien von der Mitzvah und reinführen den Tag von Shabbos. Und bis sie gekommen daheim und hat erzählt der Mutter, hat die Mutter gesagt, sie weiß nicht von der ganzen Sache, sie ist gewachsen in einem Mokken, wo sie gewöhnt, die Nekische Nischba, wo Chubeinu kommt, nicht gewusst von der ganzen Sache. Und wie das gehört geworden hat, der Keresarbeit, die Mutter wird das nicht tun, und die kleine Mädel wird lernen, einführen, neues Dorem in Hut. Die Derech von Ktanim und Ktanis, wie sagt Chassidus, eine Theke von Milliard wird aufgeregt. Und sie gar nicht scheich ist zu sagen, oh, kein Agbolle, so hat es ungewöhnlich. Und als sie gebeten, was hat aus der Mutter, sie bet bei ihr, keine Sache nicht, mehr nicht, wie der Rische, als sie soll das können tun. Und die sie hat gemacht, eine Gewalt mit Prius, hat der Mutter gesagt, soll sie aufhören, weinen und tun, was sie will, und soll sie losen zurück. Ist sie geworden, bis Simcha Gdele, bei Jeser, und hat ihr angesagt, wenn die Zeit ist, auch zu anzünden, den Lehre Shabbos Kodesh, und er gehabt eine eigene Leichte mit einer eigenen Lichtel und allein angezündet und gemacht allein der Bruch ist er gewöhnt bei sich Leilo. Und danach hatten sich hier angesagt, dass Schabbos dormi das nicht reden und nicht schuffieren und nicht schokeln, wie Chulu, ist rumgegangen und angesagt, die ganze Huis, man soll nicht schöpfen, die Licht, man soll nicht bloßen auf der Licht. Da weggestellt die Lichtel auf Nord, auf den Schulchen, wo man hat gegessen, wie Chulu. Aber die Mutter und der Vater, der Brüder, sie hat mit der Brüder, Schwester, Chulu, der sehen, als nicht in Gewalt, und ich dachte, Freitag, wo Jacher sehr, hat nicht gelost anziehen und keine Sturms. Aber mit derselben Feierlichkeit, mit derselben Herzigkeit bei ihr, und das zeigt mal Spiel gewesen auf Scharbene Arbeit. Als er durchgegangen nach Porsche Bossi, hat nur gehört anstellen den Television, Kolsmann der Lichter gebrennt. Sie hat gesagt, Mai, Haich, wir sind zu der Mutter gefragt beim Vater, zu der Vater beim Mutter, und gesagt, als sie selbst hat etwas geordnet. Aber die kleine Mädel geht da rum und singt, als das ein heiliger Schabbos. Und der Licht brennt noch. Ist Kolsmann, der Licht brennt auf dem Tisch, kann er bei sich nicht peilen, anstellen die Television. Danach ist gewesen ein Telefon, sind ich gegangen, lernen im Telefon. Danach hat die Mutter etwas angegeben, gucken, als sie sagt, ob es ist modern. Wir gehen rein nach Schochen, zur Freundin, sagt, als sie brennt ein Lichtel. Und die kleine Tochter ihre ist Molle Simche, weil sie hat angezündet nach Schabbos dicke Licht. Und teilt hat das an Nerkodisch, Vegenkodisch, Chulu. Und sie geht herum in einer Woche dicke Kleidung, sie selbst hat etwas geordnet. Als sie sich mit Jasche gewöhnt, die Hima, sie tegen in Zindenlicht. Als sie dann in Zindenlicht, hat sie dann noch bei sich nicht gekonnt peilen, sie soll gehen zu den Prieten, zu den Meven und zünden die Feier. Man kann sich aber nicht essen, gestammt, sehr kalte, hat nun gemacht schon. Aber dann gemacht schon, und das hat schon gehabt, eine Wirkung auf morgen, die zu dächen. Danach ist durchgegangen, wie gerät früher, Esther kommt erzählen dem ganzen Sipur, der Vater sei schon in der Darge von beiden Schuhen. Von was hat er das genommen? Von einer Erschel Schabbos, was hat angezündet mit der Druf, Tag mit der Chinuch. Ich darf von einer Reis nicht nur der Chinuch, von der kleinen Mädel, aber ich habe sie werden aber als Mitzwe. Wenn sie mit keinem sei, die Mitzwe beschleimusse, nur durch den Ruf, was sie mechanisch gewährt, die ganze Hui.
Wow, that was beautiful. So ladies, please bring more light into the world. And let's bring so much light that we have the ultimate light of the coming of Mashiach so soon. Have a blessed night. Good night.